Hello Year 7, welcome to your last lesson of Coraline for this week. So, two different characters on the screen here. Two different characters who want to remind you about your top tips for working. Make sure you've got all your other devices turned off. No PS4s or Xboxes on for this lesson. All your concentration fully focused on the lesson. Make sure you're working somewhere quiet and you've got everything to hand. Okay? And as it's your last lesson as well, make sure at the end of today, if you need to, you've got to upload all of your work from this week or just this week if you're in Miss Kayser's class. Okay, so let's go. Right, chapter 4, Miss Spink and Miss Forcible is your title. So write that neatly please and underline it with a date. Pause the video if you need to do that now. So, Miss Spink and Miss Forcible, there's a gorgeous drawing by Mrs. Sykes in our English department. She works down at St Helens Gate, so you won't have met her yet. Very talented artist, as you can tell. What do we know about them so far? Pause the video if you need to have a think. You can write that question down in your exercise book because we're just going to write some bullets down about these characters. The thing, what do we know about Miss Forcible and Miss Spink? Think about where they live, think about any pets. What do we know? Pause the video. Okay, what did you get? Well, they live in the flat underneath Coraline and her family. Did you get that? They used to be actresses, darling, as they say. Do you remember that? I think they still think they are as well. Okay, what else did you get? They call Coraline Caroline. They always get her name wrong. Did you remember that? What else do we know about them? Got lots of dogs. Remember what they're called? Hamish is one of them. Scottish names. They read tea leaves. So when you drink your cup of tea, they don't have tea bags, they put loose tea in their tea. Drink your tea, when the tea leaves are in the bottom, they look at them, they try and predict the future. Lot of nonsense. They read it and they told Coraline something. They read the tea leaves and they told Coraline she was in great danger. Didn't really tell her anything else, which wasn't very helpful. And finally, given her a stone with a hole in it. Sounds like a bit of a lucky charm, maybe? Okay, right then. So what we're going to do this lesson. First of all, we're going to read chapter 4 in the book. It's a great chapter. We're going to think about what other features of a fairy tale are introduced, because remember we're looking at this book as a bit of a fairy tale and the elements of a fairy tale that Neil Gaiman uses and how he uses them. Then we're going to summarise what else we learn about Miss Spink and Miss Forcible. Most of all, we're going to enjoy reading chapter 4. Okay? Remember, you can just listen to my reading if you like the sound of my lovely voice. You can follow my reading on the screen as well if you wish to, or you can mute my voice, pause the video and read it independently. That's up to you. Okay, so on this screen is going to be the first page of chapter 4 coming up, Year 7. The house looked exactly the same from the outside, or almost exactly the same. Around Miss Spink and Miss Forcible's door were blue and red light bulbs that flashed on and off, spelling out words, the lights chasing each other around the door, on and off, around and around. Outstanding was followed by a theatrical and then triumph. It was a sunny, cold day, exactly like the one she'd left. There was a polite noise from behind her. She turned round. Standing on the wall next to her was a large black cat, identical to the large black cat she'd seen in the grounds at home. "Good afternoon," said the cat. Its voice sounded like the voice at the back of Coraline's head, the voice she thought words in, but a man's voice, not a girl's. "Hello," said Coraline. "I saw a cat like you in the garden at home. You must be the other cat." The cat shook its head. "No," it said, "I'm not the other anything. I'm me." It tipped its head on one side. Green eyes glinted. "You people are spread all over the place. Cats, on the other hand, keep ourselves together, if you see what I mean." "I suppose. But if you're the same cat I saw at home, how can you talk?" "Cats don't have shoulders, not like people do." But the cat shrugged in one smooth movement that started at the tip of its tail and ended in a raised movement of its whiskers. "I can talk." "Cats don't talk at home." "No," said the cat. "No," said Coraline. The cat leapt smoothly from the wall to the grass near Coraline's feet. It stared up at her. "Well, you're the expert on these things," said the cat dryly. "After all, what would I know? Only a cat." It began to walk away, head and tail held high and proud. "Come back," said Coraline. "Please, I'm sorry. I really am." The cat stopped walking and sat down and began to wash itself, thoughtfully, apparently unaware of Coraline's existence. We could be friends, you know," said Coraline. "We could be rare specimens of an exotic breed of African dancing elephant," said the cat. "But we're not. At least," it added cattily, after darting a brief look at Coraline, "I'm not." Coraline sighed. "Please, what's your name?" Coraline asked the cat. "Look, I'm Coraline, okay?" The cat yawned slowly, carefully revealing a mouth and tongue of astounding pinkness. "Cats don't have names," it said. "No?" said Coraline. "No," said the cat. "Now, you people have names. That's because you don't know who you are. We know who we are, so we don't need names." There was something irritatingly self-centred about the cat, Coraline decided, as if it were, in its opinion, the only thing in any world or place that could possibly be of any importance. Half of her wanted to be very rude to it. The other half of her wanted to be polite and deferential. The polite half won. "Please, what is this place?" The cat glanced around briefly. "It's here," said the cat. "I can see that. Well, how did you get here?" "Like you did. I walked," said the cat, "like this." Coraline watched as the cat walked slowly across the lawn. It walked behind a tree, but didn't come out the other side. Coraline went over to the tree and looked behind it. The cat was gone. She walked back towards a house. There was another polite noise from behind her. It was the cat. "By the way," it said, "it was sensible of you to bring protection. I'd hang on to it if I were you." "Protection? That's what I said," said the cat. "And anyway—" It paused and stared intently at something that wasn't there. Then it went down into a low crouch and moved slowly forward 2 or 3 steps. It seemed to be stalking an invisible mouse. Abruptly, it turned tail and dashed for the woods. It vanished among the trees. Coraline wondered what the cat had meant. She also wondered whether cats could all talk where she came from and just chose not to, or whether they could only talk when they were here, wherever here was. She walked down the brick steps to the Mrs. Spink and Forcible's front door. The blue and red lights flashed on and off. The door was open, just slightly. She knocked on it, but her first knock made the door swing open, and Coraline went in. She was in a dark room that smelled of dust and velvet. The door swung shut behind her, and the room was black. Coraline edged forward into a small anteroom. Her face brushed against something soft. It was cloth. She reached up her hand and pushed at the cloth. It parted. She stood blinking on the other side of the velvet curtains in a poorly lit theatre. Far away, at the edge of the room, was a high wooden stage, empty and bare, a dim spotlight shining onto it from above. There were seats between Coraline and the stage, rows and rows of seats. She heard a shuffling noise, and a light came towards her, swinging from side to side. When it was closer, she saw the light was coming from a torch, being carried in the mouth of a large black Scotty dog, its muzzle grey with age. "Hello," said Coraline. The dog put the torch down on the floor and looked up at her. "Right, let's see your ticket," it said gruffly. "Ticket?" "That's what I said. Ticket. Haven't got all day. You know, you can't watch the show without a ticket." Coraline sighed. "I don't have a ticket," she admitted. "Another one," the dog said gloomily. "Come in here, bold as anything. Where's your ticket?" "I haven't got one." "I don't know." It shook its head, then shrugged. "Come on, then." The dog picked up the torch in its mouth and trotted off into the dark. Coraline followed. When it got near to the front of the stage, it stopped and shone the torch onto an empty seat. Coraline sat down and the dog wandered off. As her eyes got used to the darkness, she realised that the other inhabitants of the seats were also dogs. There was a sudden hissing noise from behind the stage. Coraline decided it was the sound of a scratchy old record being put onto a record player. The hissing noise became the noise of trumpets, and Miss Spink and Miss Forcible came onto the stage. Miss Spink was riding a one-wheeled bicycle and juggling balls. Miss Forcible skipped on behind her, holding a basket of flowers. She scattered the flower petals across the stage as she went. They reached the front of the stage, and Miss Spink leapt nimbly off the unicycle, and the two old women bowed low. All the dogs thumped their tails and barked enthusiastically. Coraline clapped politely. Then they unbuttoned their fluffy round coats and opened them, but their coats weren't all that open. Their faces opened too, like empty shells. And out of the old empty fluffy round bodies stepped two young women. They were thin and pale and quite pretty, and had black button eyes. The new Miss Spink was wearing green tights and high brown boots that went most of the way up her legs. The new Miss Forcible wore a white dress and had flowers in her long yellow hair. Coraline pressed back against her seat. Miss Spink left the stage, and the noise of trumpets squealed as the gramophone needle dug its way across a record and was pulled off. "This is my favourite bit," whispered the little dog in the seat next to her. The other Miss Forcible picked a knife out of a box on the corner of the stage. "Is that a dagger that I see before me?" she asked. "Yes," shouted all the little dogs. "It is." Miss Forcible curtsied, and all the dogs applauded again. Coraline didn't bother clapping this time. Miss Spink came back on. She slapped her thigh, and all the little dogs woofed. "And now," Miss Spink said, "Miriam and I proudly present a new and exciting addendum to our theatrical exposition. Do I see a volunteer?" The little dog next to Coraline nudged her with its front paw. "That's you," it hissed. Coraline stood up and walked up to the wooden steps to the stage. "Can I have a big round of applause for the young volunteer?" asked Miss Spink. The dogs woofed and squealed and thumped their tails on the velvet seats. "Now, Coraline," said Miss Spink, "what's your name?" "Coraline," said Coraline. "And we don't know each other, do we?" Coraline looked at the thin young woman with black button eyes and shook her head slowly. "Now," said the other Miss Spink, "stand over here." She led Coraline over to a board by the side of the stage and put a balloon on top of Coraline's head. Miss Spink walked over to Miss Forcible. She blindfolded Miss Forcible's button eyes with a black scarf and put the knife into her hands. Then she turned her round 3 or 4 times and pointed her at Coraline. Coraline held her breath and squeezed her fingers into 2 tight fists. Miss Forcible threw the knife at the balloon. It popped loudly and the knife stuck into the board just above Coraline's head and twanged there. Coraline breathed out. The dogs went wild. Miss Spink gave Coraline a very small box of chocolates and thanked her for being such a good sport. Coraline went back to her seat. You were very good, said the dog. Thank you, said Coraline. Mrs. Forcible and Spink began juggling with huge wooden clubs. Coraline opened the box of chocolates. The little dog looked at them longingly. Would you like one? She asked it. Yes, please, whispered the dog. Only not toffee ones, they make me drool. I thought chocolates weren't very good for dogs, she said, remembering something Miss Forcible had once told her. Maybe where you come from, he whispered the little dog. Here, it's all we eat. Coraline couldn't see what the chocolates were in the dark. She took an experimental bite of one which turned out to be coconut. Coraline didn't like coconut. She gave it to the dog. Thank you, said the dog. You're welcome, said Coraline. Miss Forcible and Miss Spink were doing some acting. Miss Forcible was sitting on a stepladder and Miss Spink was standing at the bottom. What's in a name? asked Miss Forcible. That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Have you got any more chocolates? Said the dog. Coraline gave the dog another chocolate. I know not how to tell thee who I am, said Miss Spink to Miss Forcible. This bit finishes soon, whispered the dog. Then they start folk dancing. How long does this go on for? Asked Coraline. The theatre? All the time, said the dog. Forever and always. Here, said Coraline. Keep the chocolates. Thank you, said the dog. Coraline stood up. See you soon, said the dog. Bye, said Coraline. She walked out of the theatre and back into the garden. She had to blink her eyes at the daylight. Her other parents were waiting for her in the garden, standing side by side. They were smiling. Did she have a nice time? Asked her other mother. It was interesting, said Coraline. The three of them walked back up to Coraline's other house together. Coraline's other mother stroked Coraline's hair with her long white fingers. Coraline shook her head. Don't do that, said Coraline. Her other mother took her hand away. So, said her other father, do you like it here? I suppose, said Coraline. It's much more interesting than at home. They went inside. I'm glad you like it, said Coraline's other mother, because we'd like you to think that this is your home. You can stay here forever and always if you want to. Said Coraline. She put her hands in her pockets and thought about it. Her fingertips touched the stone that the real Mrs. Spink and Forcible had given her the day before, the stone with the hole in it. If you want to stay, said her other father, there's only one little thing we'll have to do, so you can stay here forever and always. They went into the kitchen. On a china plate on the kitchen table were a spool of black cotton and a long silver needle, and beside them 2 large black buttons. I don't think so, said Coraline. Oh, but we want you to, said her other mother. We want you to stay. It's just a little thing. It won't hurt, said her other father. Coraline knew that when grown-ups told you something wouldn't hurt, it almost always did. She shook her head. Her other mother smiled brightly, and her hair on her head drifted like plants under the sea. We only want what's best for you, she said. She put her hand on Coraline's shoulder. Coraline backed away. I'm going now, said Coraline. She put her hands back in her pockets. Her fingers closed around the stone with a hole in it. Her other mother's hand scuttled off Coraline's shoulder like a frightened spider. If that's what you want, she said. Yes, said Coraline. We'll see you soon, though, said her other father. When you come back? Said Coraline. And then we'll all be together as one big happy family, said her other mother, forever and always. Coraline backed away. She turned and hurried into the drawing room and pulled open the door in the corner. There was no brick wall there now, just darkness. A night black underground darkness that seemed as if things in it might be moving. Coraline hesitated. She turned back. Her other mother and her other father were walking towards her, holding hands. They were looking at her with their black button eyes, or at least she thought they were looking at her. She couldn't be sure. Her other mother reached out her free hand and beckoned gently with one white finger. Her pale lips mouthed, "Come back soon," although she said nothing aloud. Coraline took a deep breath and stepped into the darkness where strange voices whispered and distant winds howled. She became certain that there was something in the dark behind her, something very old and very slow. Her heart beat so hard and so loudly she was scared it would burst out of her chest. She closed her eyes against the dark. Eventually she bumped into something and opened her eyes, startled. She had bumped into an armchair in her drawing room. The open doorway behind her was blocked by rough red bricks. She was home. Okay, Year 7, I hope you enjoyed that. So your question I want you to write down then is, what fairy tale features have we seen? And there is a reminder of the 6 features of the fairy tale we looked at right at the beginning of week 1. So there are 3 features we've just seen in that chapter. You can pause the video and just have a little reminder, and I want you to write down the 3 features of fairy tale we've just seen in chapter 4. Okay, which ones did you get? There we are. Did you spot those ones? Magic spells, talking animals, or the distant, enchanted or make-believe land? Alter or check your answers if you didn't get quite those ones right. Doesn't matter. Okay, so what I want you to now think is, next to where you've written down those 3 features, can you remember the specific things in chapter 4 that matches up with those? So what was the magic or what was the spell that we read about? What were the talking animals? And what kind of distant or enchanted or make-believe land did we read about in chapter 4? So next to each one or underneath each one, however you've written it down, can you just write a little sentence or a few words about how we've seen those in chapter 4? Pause the video to do that now. Okay, so the magic spell, what did we see? Well, right at the end of the chapter, the buttons on their eyes will make Coraline stay in the other world forever. They've got the cotton and the needle ready. I know. Talking animals, well, the cat and the dogs, they'll talk to her, don't they? Cat says he talks all the time. My cat talks to me. Distant or enchanted land, of course she's in the other world, but a new part of it we've seen is Miss Spink and Miss Forcible's house. It's turned into some theatre and they perform on the stage forever and always. She asks the dog, how long does this go on for? And he just says, forever. This is it. This is their house. Okay, so pause the video if you need to get that down. Well done. Right, so to finish the lesson, we have got 6 questions that I would like you to try and answer about Miss Spink and Miss Forcible. You've got, what words were flashing on their door? What vehicle was Miss Spink riding when she entered the stage? What did the 2 round ladies do to turn into the 2 thin ladies? What weapon did Miss Forcible pull out? What does she do with the weapon? How long does their show go on for? I would like you to pause the video and I would like you to answer those questions neatly and as carefully in your book as possible, Year 7. Okay, so I want you to check your answers with the answers that come up on the screen, Year 7. What words were flashing on their door? Give yourself a tick or 3 ticks even if you got all 3. Astounding, a theatrical and triumph. Well done if you got all those. Question number 2. What vehicle was Miss Spink riding when she entered the stage? A unicycle, or if you just put a one-wheel bicycle, absolutely fine. Well done if you got that. Question number 3. What did the 2 round ladies do to turn into the 2 thin ladies? They didn't go to Slimming World. They didn't do Dry January. They unbuttoned themselves, including their faces, and stepped out of their bodies. How strange. Well done if you got that. Number 4. What weapon did Miss Forcible pull out? A dagger or a knife? Did you spot the Shakespeare quote? Is that a dagger I see before me? Brownie points if you can tell us where that comes from. What does she do with the weapon? Can you remember the trick? She throws it at a balloon above Coraline's head. Mrs. Sunderland can tell you a story about that. Maybe later. Number 6. How long does their show go on for? What was that? All the time. Forever and always. Well done, Year 7. And the show has ended. And the show has ended. Well done. So don't forget, your 4th lesson is a reading lesson. So make sure you're reading. There is an audio book playlist on the YouTube channel for English. If you're stuck for books to read, make sure you're uploading your work so we can all see all the fabulous things that you're doing, Year 7. Excellent. Have a lovely weekend. Over and out.